I was Hanny, I just bought Rico from Street Scores. You can tell I'm not at home, but I had to make sure I get my 53-man roster prediction done. I would have gotten it done before I even left Atlanta. But you never know, man, with the preseason game. And it's crazy because I already had like my 53-man roster before that last preseason game. And then I had to make like 3 changes after that preseason game. So I'm glad I didn't just go ahead and record it and just wait to put it out or something like that. I had to revise everything. So that's why I'm recording it while I'm not at home. So if you see any like Rico reports and it looks like I'm at home, I'm not. Those are just all pre-recorded as well. And then I'm just super busy. So whenever I get time, like late at night, like right now, it's 11:30 p.m. Just walked in the building. So I'm doing everything I can to keep the content coming. And I also promise y'all I will be back to live stream and do everything for the week 1 regular season game against the Cardinals. So do not worry about that. But today we're coming with the final 2023 Washington Commanders 53-man roster projection. Just to let you know, if you don't know, the final 53-man rosters are due August 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So I wanted to get this out at least 24 hours before that. Also, shouts out to the Commanders. Congrats on going undefeated in the preseason for the first time since 2013. I know it's the preseason. I know it doesn't really matter that much, but man, I'll take it. But yeah, man, we got to do a full dive into each position group, who I'm keeping, why I'm keeping them, also who I'm not keeping. At the end of the video, I'm going to have some closing remarks and speak on some of the guys that I'm not keeping and why I'm sad that I just couldn't find a way to get them on here. Because it's not necessarily what I want to do and what I would do. This is more so my best attempt at predicting who we actually will keep. I'm trying to get into the mind of the Commanders. So as much as a guy like Jared Patterson that I like, I highly doubt he makes a team. So we're going to talk about that. I'm also going to include, you'll see it in like the pictures that I have for each position group, how many they kept last year in 2022, and then how many I predict us keeping for 2023. So you'll see that at the top right corner of everything. You'll see everybody's pictures, everybody's names, all of that type of stuff. Y'all know how these roster predictions go, these roster projections. So, hey man, before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Like I already said, make sure y'all stay tuned because week 1 regular season, we're hitting the ground running. Preview videos for each game, live streams throughout the entire game, all 4 quarters, every game, post-game review video, everything that I saw, trying to go position group by position group if I can, and whether we win or lost, good or bad in either game. Of course, also post-game live stream call-in show where y'all call in, you voice your opinions that you have as well. So man, make sure y'all pull up because this regular season is going to be really fun because I see us going to the playoffs, so I'm very optimistic. Dan Snyder sold the team to Josh Harris. We're going from Scott Turner to Eric Bieniemy. We're going from Carson Wentz to Taylor Heineke to Sam Howell. This is going to be a way better season, and I got y'all fully covered for all of it. So without further ado, let's get it.
You tell your family you're going to be a commander.
All right, so first of all, for offense, I have us keeping 26 total players. And so, hey, man, offense is a little heavy. 2 more players than the defense, but we'll get to that. Quarterback-wise, I have us keeping 3. We kept 3 last year, so I expect us to keep 3 this year, especially after the NFL owners passed a proposal to allow teams to have a third QB active on game days without taking up one of those 46 game day active man roster spots. So Jake Fromm will be active every game day, no matter what, as the third quarterback because he doesn't take up one of those 46 spots. That's something that every team is a beneficiary of. So just let you know, every team is going to carry 3 quarterbacks. We no longer have to necessarily worry about potentially Logan Thomas coming in the game. I mean, I hope we never even reach that situation. I hope Sam Howell can play all game, every game this entire season, really for the rest of his career, honestly. But, you know, when in doubt, at least Jake Fromm, that was actually, I mean, as a Georgia Bulldog fan, I didn't expect him to look that good. I know, granted, it was against backups, but he looked way better than I expected. And then Jacoby Brissett, I mean, you know, he didn't look bad, but Jake Fromm just looked better than him in the preseason. And then, of course, Sam Howell's our franchise quarterback, and thank goodness, because I'm very optimistic about what he can do for us. Now, moving on to the running backs, because that was pretty obvious. Last year, we kept 4. I only have us keeping 3 this year. You'll see why when we get to the tight ends. But Of course, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson are your two primary running backs, but Chris Rodriguez, man, don't sleep on him. Other than that fumble, he had a fantastic, not only just preseason, but off-season. Preseason specifically, he averaged 7.2 yards per carry. That man was going crazy. Now, that's also a compliment to the offensive line, because the offensive line wanted to treat him like Willie Beeman in any given Sunday. It wouldn't have mattered how well he could run the ball. But I kept telling y'all, ever since we drafted Chris Rodriguez, that Kentucky offensive line wasn't really good. And going against SEC defensive lines, his offensive line was more than likely worse than the defensive line that they were going against any given game. And then Will Levis wasn't much help as far as taking people outside of the box anyway. So the fact that he was that productive in a situation like that, then he comes to the Commanders, I'm telling you, man, Chris Rodriguez is a monster waiting to be unleashed. Definitely a really well-kept secret in the draft. And then, of course, Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson. I mean, we've already seen just from the preseason, Eric Bieniemy's imprint and impact that he's already having on his team, with Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson both running pretty much as many routes as they get carries. I mean, they were receiving targets and catching the ball out of the backfield, or not even just out of the backfield. I think at one point, Brian Robinson, motioned out wide, before the ball was snapped. He was like a receiver. He was out there like Terry McLaurin type of stuff. So, man, these receivers are going to be used heavily. They're going to be out there a lot. Even if they don't necessarily get the ball, they're going to be out there a lot. And I was very proud because I saw a compilation of some all-22 footage of how the Commanders pass block, their running backs pass block in that second preseason game against the Ravens. I was very surprised, very proud of guys like Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson with how much they've improved in pass protection. Because it's not just a physical thing, it's a lot of mental things as well. Knowing who to pick, when to pick them up, which technique to use and stuff like that. And they look like they've improved mightily there. So that's going to keep them on the field more. Because as of right now, I've been hearing all through our training camp, Chris Rodriguez is our best pass blocker, which is going to open a way for him to be on the field way more often than people had expected. Then that Ravens preseason game, man, those running backs were blocking, man. They were blocking. But Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson. And then, of course, if we were going to keep four like we originally did last year, my guy would be Jared Patterson, even though I feel like the Commanders, with Eric Bieniemy being the offensive coordinator and assistant head coach, he'd probably keep Derek Gore. Ron Rivera will be fighting to keep Jonathan Williams, and I don't think anybody would have a voice for Jared Patterson except for me and maybe a lot of y'all out there. I love Jared Patterson. He would be my running back four if we kept four. I just don't think we'll keep four, and even if we do, it just won't be him. Just go ahead and let you know that now. Just go ahead and assume Jared Patterson is on the practice squad, and I wouldn't be surprised if somebody picks him up because, man, every time I see him, he's shining. Not only just in the preseason, but even in the regular season. When that man gets carries, it always seems like that he's able to get minimum 5-6 yards every time. I just don't understand it, but it is what it is, man. Then wide receivers wise, we kept 6 last year. I have us keeping 6 this year. And this is a very controversial topic. This is arguably the most controversial part of people's debates about 53-man roster projections and things like that. We already know Terry McLaurin. We already know Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, and De'Ami Brown. Those are the obvious four, the locks and everything like that. And originally I had Kazmir Allen. Those one of those guys that I had this whole setup. And I had Kazmir Allen's picture right there and his name instead of Dax Milne. I had to replace those because after that muff punt, that was pretty much it. You were already having a little bit of a struggle catching passes consistently. He was able to get open, but he would just drop random wide open catches. And then you had that muff punt in the preseason. That pretty much sealed your fate, I'm assuming. I was really, really rooting for Kazmir Allen, and I just don't even know if I can back him after that. You know, Ron Rivera is Mr. Safe. He's not taking any risk at all. He's very risk averse. And Dax Milne is the definition of that. Even though he is automatic fair catch, it doesn't matter if he fair catches it or not. Where he gets the ball is pretty much where we're going to start our field positioning. But at the very least, he doesn't muff punts. And he's also a dependable receiver. Dax Milne right now is a better receiver, too. He's a safer punt returner, and he's the better receiver. You know he's going to get open. You know he's going to be where he needs to be. You know he's going to catch the pass if it goes to him. So a very dependable backup slot. And then Byron Pringle is a really interesting one for me. Me personally, I already know we're keeping one of the Chiefs players in one of those spots. If we keep 7 receivers, then maybe we can fit in Mitchell Tinsley. I really, really like Mitchell Tinsley. If we end up not keeping Mitchell Tinsley, he's going to go somewhere else and at the very least be a wide receiver 3 or 4, I feel like. And I think he can work his way up to a wide receiver 2 spot. I'm that high on Tinsley, but we're just so deep at receiver. I mean, if Mitchell Tinsley were here in 2020, man, imagine how things could be different, dog. I mean, we really could have used the Mitchell Tinsley back in 2020. But right now, our receiver group is so deep. We're going to cut so many talented players at the receiver position. It's just unfair, man. But we're going to keep one of the Chiefs players, not only just because of Eric Bieniemy, because on one side, you have Byron Pringle, who, again, I'm rooting for Marcus Kemp. I feel like Marcus Kemp makes the most sense in my opinion. But I can see why Byron Pringle, with his ability to play both slot, outside receiver, if there's an injury, I mean, Terry McLaurin's dealing with the injury right now. Remember, we had the injury concerns with Curtis Samuel way back a couple of years ago. Jahan Dotson missed a few games last year. De'Ami Brown, I think he's been banged up a little bit as well. Dax Milne is dealing with injuries right now. I think he got pulled out of the preseason game because of his injury situation. So I can see why you would keep Byron Pringle, who can play the X, Y, the Z, whatever receiver position you need him to play, slot, outside. He can play that and play it pretty well as a veteran, a guy that already knows Eric Bieniemy's offense. So that makes a lot of sense there. I just feel like Marcus Kemp can do things that really nobody else in this roster can do, especially at the receiver position. First of all, he's an elite special teams blocker. Again, just go back and look at that last return that the Chiefs had against the Philadelphia Eagles in that Super Bowl. Nothing else to say there. And then also, if you were to keep 7 receivers and add Marcus Kemp, he would still be the only receiver that's 6'5" or taller. Everybody else is 6'1" or shorter. There's a 4-inch gap between him and everybody else. So, I'm definitely rooting for Marcus Kemp's. He has like 2 niches that nobody else has. 2 specialties that nobody else has in their tool belt. Not only in this receiving group, but it's really this entire roster. I mean, other than the tight end group, he's the only guy with some offensive height for us. And then some offensive pass catcher height. And then again, nobody can block how he blocks on special teams. Nobody on this entire 90-man roster, nobody else can block like he does. But I'm happy either way, honestly. It's not like I'm just super rooting for Marcus Kemp. I'll be disappointed if we don't get him. I just think that it makes the most sense in my opinion. But I could also see the argument for Byron Pringle. I can super see the argument for Mitchell Tinsley. And, of course, I was rooting for Kazmi Allen. But after that month punt, Dax Milne pretty much won now. I don't even think Dax Milne was healthy. I think he was hurt when Kazmi Allen had that muff punt. So Kazmi Allen literally just handed the job to Dax Milne, who wasn't even healthy enough to go out there and make any plays to win that spot back. Kazmi Allen literally had to lose that spot. Now moving on to the tight ends, we kept 5 last year on the initial 53-man roster. I'm not exactly sure how many we kept throughout the season, but this time last year we only kept 5. And I'm only keeping it 4 right now. I mean, I see Logan Thomas, John Bates, Cole Turner as automatics. Cole Turner is emerging as one of Sam Howell's favorite targets, especially with Logan Thomas dealing with his injury. John Bates is a really good blocker, but Cole Turner, man, every time Sam Howell needs to make a play, it's Cole Turner out there. And then for that 4th tight end, I have Alex Armah, who's a fullback / tight end. So he's kind of like a almost running back, a fullback if we want to run those type of plays, those type of formations. And then he's also a tight end that can block really well if you need him to, so almost like a slightly smaller John Bates. Man, I was rooting for Curtis Hodges so bad, man. I want him to make the roster. And honestly, a couple of months ago, I just assumed Curtis Hodges was easily making the roster. I didn't even think it was like a debatable topic. And then that Ravens game with those drops, dog, they were just too bad. You just can't forget and forgive the drops he had. Now, they may still keep him because 6'8" tight ends just don't come walking around every day. And he already knows your system. He's improving as a blocker. If you can get that man to improve his hands, he could be a serious threat at 6'8". But maybe we just hold him onto the practice squad. We kind of snuck him into the injured reserve last year. We didn't know what to do with him. We had Armani Rogers and all of those guys. So we just had to I think he had a really tiny injury and we just exaggerated it and put him on IR. We found any excuse to not let another team touch him. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find a way to finesse the system and do that again this year. But I don't know how we would because he doesn't look banged up at all. He just has a case of the drops. So maybe we can define that as a sickness. I don't know. Then moving on to interior offensive line, we kept 6 last year. I was keeping 6 this year. And of course, your starting left guard right now is Sadiq Charles. Y'all already know I'm a big Chris Paul fan, but it is what it is. We're not here for that. We're just here to predict the roster. Nick Gates is your starting center, and Samuel Cosmi is your starting right guard, from left to right in that order. And then, of course, Chris Paul, Tyler Larson, and Ricky Stromberg are your backups. Now, I think, honestly, depth chart-wise, if Samuel Cosmi or Sadiq Charles were to get hurt, Chris Paul is next up. But Ricky Stromberg looked pretty decent at guard. I think, ultimately, looking down the line, years in advance, I think Ricky Stromberg will end up being a better center eventually. than he is guard, but today he's a better guard. I think he'll end up being a better center, and I think he'll like kind of plateau as far as how well he can play the guard position, even though he's a better guard than he is center right now. But I think ultimately his highest ceiling is at center. I could definitely see that happening at some point in his career. Maybe not this year, but sometime down the line. Offensive tackles, we kept 3 last year. I was keeping 4 this year, just simply because I think they're going to try to validate that Braden Daniels in the 5th round pick right now, because it's not looking like it's worthy of it at all. And they said it when we drafted him. He's a 1 to 2 year project. That's what the Travell Warden, our offensive lines coach, basically said that. And boy, he does look like it. This is not a guy that's ready to play right now at all. If he had to go into a game right now, we're doomed. Sam Howell, I don't even want him out there. You might as well go ahead and throw Jacoby Brissett or Jake Fromm out there, because Braden Daniels is going to get somebody killed. But of course, your starting tackles are Charles Leno and Andrew Wiley. Cornelius Lucas is your backup swing tackle. Honestly, if it were up to me, I would have Trent Scott. Trent Scott is easily the better backup tackle right now than Braden Daniels. I don't even think it's necessarily close, but that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. They're going to try to legitimize picking him. Actually, in the 4th round, my fault. He was a 4th round pick. Man, I just don't understand why we took so many. Ricky Stromberg, even though he's a good player, drafting him in the 3rd round, he's not ready to play right now. It's crazy. Then Braden Daniels in the 4th round, not ready to play. Maybe not even within the next year or two. I just don't understand. But man, I really think they're just going to look at themselves in the mirror and be like, well, he made the 53-man roster, so he can't be that bad. But I think that he doesn't deserve to make the 53-man roster. I think they're just going to force it. But when in doubt, because Braden Daniels, again, is unplayable right now. If we have serious injuries at tackle, Cornelius Lucas has to start at 1, and then we need another one. Just move Samuel Cosme to right tackle, I guess, and then we can move Chris Paul to starting right guard in his place. But we're not playing Braden Daniels right now for any reason at all. No reason should he ever play until further notice. I don't even want to just say week 1. I don't even know if he'll be ready by week 11 the way he looks right now. Then moving on to defense, I have us keeping 24 total players, 2 less than the offense. Let's dive into it. Interior defensive linemen, we kept 4 last year. I have us keeping 5 this year. Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, obviously. We don't even have to talk about that. Then John Ridgeway is the backup that stepped up so big for us last year. Elite run stopper, double team eater, nose tackle, zero tech. Appreciate him. I just don't want to let him go. The Cowboys tried to sneak him onto the practice squad. We stole him. I'm pretty sure if we try to do the same thing, somebody would steal him away from us. Maybe the Cowboys would get back and steal him back type of thing. We don't want to lose a John Ridgeway. You do not let a guy that dependable and with that much of a niche. Like, I love Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, but they're not double team eaters. They're not elite zero tech nose tackle run stoppers like a John Ridgeway. He doesn't provide any pass rush upside, but if you need him to stop the run, to clog up that middle, he's going to do that. He's going to take a guard and a center with him and not move from where he started the snap at all. And boy, that is a very useful skill to have involved. We're going to run a lot of 5 defensive linemen. I've been hearing from Jack DeRoe and Ron Rivera and people going to the training camp practices. It looks like we're probably going to run 5 defensive linemen, even more this year than we have previously. And then, of course, for Darian Mathis, my thing with him right now is I hope he's healthy enough to play, but maybe if he's a little banged up, you start him on some IR, one of those lists, and then that opens up another roster spot. And then when he's ready to go, you can bring him back. We'll see how that goes. Then the FL Bada, I mean, you can consider him an edge rusher or an interior defensive lineman, but I just, instead of 6 edge rushers and 4 interior defensive linemen, I might prefer to just do 5 and 5 so it can look a little bit more even, just like, a little bit more symmetrical. So moving on to the 5 edge rushers. Again, FL Bada is technically more of an edge rusher than an interior defensive lineman, but he plays both, just like James Smith-Williams. But yeah, of course, Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Chase Young, I hope he's good to go. After the preseason finale against the Bengals, Ron Rivera was asked about Chase Young's injury, and he already seen the doctor. I think he was supposed to see the doctor Friday. We played on Saturday, and Ron Rivera was like, I mean, basically, he didn't have to answer the question because he's not liable to answer any of those questions as far as player updates, especially health-wise, until like the week 1 regular season. We're now in the flow of the regular season. It's technically week 0 of the regular season. They do not have to disclose any type of injury updates to us, so I'm not surprised, but dang, man, you could have gave us something. I'm assuming Chase Young and Montez Sweat should be good to go. KJ Henry is, I guess, the backup to them, but honestly, right now, between the 3 guys after Chase Young and Montez Sweat, I think Andre Jones is probably going to be the most useful, at the very least the flashiest, because that man flashes. He's always in the backfield, whether it's against the run or against the pass, man. He's that situational pass rusher, obvious passing downs, 3rd and long, second and extremely long type of guy that we were hoping Shaka Toney would be. He's already that a little bit right now. He's only going to get better. He has the exact size of a guy that you would want to be great at that. I mean, if we were running like a 3-4 defense, we needed like an outside linebacker. He would be the prototypical type of guy for that. So I love him as a situational pass rusher. I'm really excited about his potential. Jay Smith-Williams is Mr. Dependable. I mean, this guy can play edge. He can play interior defensive lineman, whatever you need. As long as he's healthy, he's good to go. And that man started 14 games for us last year until Chase Young came back. So, boy, to have somebody like that on your depth, there's no way you release a guy like that. I've seen some people say that you may release Jay Smith-Williams. I just don't see how you allow that to happen. That guy started, not played and started 14 games for you last year. You release him, he's going to start for another defensive lineman, and they're not another team, and they're not going to let him go like we did. I know we have a lot of defensive line depth, but you got to find a way to keep a starter on your team. But again, KJ Henry, man, I don't know. Like last month, you would have asked me, I thought KJ Henry was a lot because he was looking pretty good in training camp, and then Andre Jones stepped up and surpassed him, and it may not even be close right now. So, I mean, I guess if you had to create a roster spot somewhere, I've already given you a couple, but if you wanted to add an additional running back or maybe wide receiver, maybe 5th round pick KJ Henry, but again, the same logic as Braden Daniels, just to legitimize the pick. Maybe they'll just keep him just because of that. And I like KJ Henry. I think he's a really good edge rusher. I said when we drafted him, he's already our 3rd best edge rusher over Jay Smith-Williams and everybody. Casey Toohill, all of the guys we had. Speaking of Casey Toohill, it's sad to see him go because that's a really good player, really good, dependable veteran guy. But we just have too much talent on the defensive line, man. It's just too much talent, too much depth. But yeah, KJ Henry, I mean, he looked pretty good in training camp. And then Andre Jones is just way better. And again, Jay Smith-Williams is just so dependable and versatile as an edge rusher and interior defensive lineman. So I like KJ Henry's projection as an edge player more than Jay Smith-Williams. But today, Jay Smith-Williams is the guy. If we had to put one of those guys in against the Arizona Cardinals, my pick would be Jay Smith-Williams. And again, Andre Jones' ceiling is ridiculous, and he's already flashing a floor right now. Then linebackers, we kept 5 last year. We're only going to keep 4 this year. Cody Barton's your Mike. Jamin Davis is your Will, outside linebacker that's going to be more so in coverage than anything else. Cody Barton's going to be the quarterback of the defense. Green dot on the helmet, calling the plays, has the headset on, hearing stuff from Jack DeRee, all of that type of stuff. David Mayo is only coming in on 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s, goal line situations, obvious rundowns. It better be the most obvious rundown. I don't even want a potential play action 3rd and 1 situation David Mayo out there, because at that point you're playing 10 on 11 defense versus offense, because boy, that boy's a liability in coverage. But as a run stopper, really good. Khaleke Hudson, man, love him. That man looked really good out there. I called him out. I was like, hey, man, this is preseason, week 3, bunch of backups out there. You think you're a starter. At times you have looked like a starter. I mean, before Jamin Davis came back and was fully healthy to start the offseason, like back in voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamps, Khaleke Hudson was starting alongside Cody Barton. And if anything, he was linebacker 1 while Cody Barton was struggling to learn the defense. Cody Barton picked up the defense in a pretty quick amount of time, and then that made Khaleke Hudson like linebacker 2 technically. Then Jamin Davis came back, that kicked Khaleke Hudson back down to linebacker 3. But he was looking like linebacker 1 at one time. Jack DeRee even said, I mean, we would love to have Jamin Davis back, but it's not like we necessarily miss him because Khaleke Hudson has stepped up big time. So I called him out entering this preseason game. I'm like, hey, you're going to be out there with a bunch of backups. I need you to stick out. I need you to look like a man amongst boys. I need you to look like a starter amongst backups, and he did just that. He led the entire Commanders team with the highest Pro Football Focus grade with a 91.4, regardless of offense, defense, special teams. He was the highest graded commander from that game on Saturday, bro. I mean, he was out there making plays in the backfield, blowing up screens. It was ridiculous. I don't even know why they left him unblocked on one of those plays. Again, he did exactly what I needed him to do. I know it's just backups, but when you're out there with backups, you need to look like the starter. You need to look like and have people like, man, why is this guy out here with the backups? Like, is this not one of the Commander starters? I'm pretty sure some Bengals fans are like, man, who is this linebacker? Why is he out here today? I thought they were sitting there starters. That's what you expect out of somebody like a Khaleke Hudson. I'm happy that he delivered. He answered to the call, man. And then going to the cornerbacks, we kept 4 last year. I was keeping 5 this year. And this one's really difficult, man. To be completely honest, I feel like I'm going to be wrong about the Tariq Castro-Fields pick. I think they're going to end up picking Christian Holmes. But this is somewhat of what I want to do because I like Tariq Castro-Fields' ceiling. Christian Holmes made a lot of plays against the Ravens in joint practices and a lot of plays in that first Browns preseason game, but a lot of it was just he was getting beat in coverage and then he would just deliver a hit to make people drop it, but those should have been catches for good gains. Maybe you keep Christian Holmes because he's the only other long receiver other than like Benjamin St-Juste. And I guess Emmanuel Forbes is long too. He's 6'1" and really long. But Benjamin St-Juste is 6'3", the longest corner that we have. I'm sorry, I said receiver earlier. Christian Holmes is another 6'3" corner that has that same length as Benjamin St-Juste. So maybe just because of that, you keep Christian Holmes. But I think honestly, maybe I'm just again having my own thoughts on this, and this is maybe less of a prediction and more of a what will Rico do. But Tariq Castro-Fields, with having that extreme speed that you can't teach, I wouldn't be surprised they ended up keeping him literally just for the speed. It's literally just Christian Holmes length, Tariq Castro-Fields speed. That's who you're going to end up picking between the two. I just went with Tariq Castro-Fields for the purpose of this video, but I would not be surprised. This is like literally 50-50 right here. Literally. But yeah, and it's sad too because you need to keep 5 corners, but honestly, hey, man, some of the wide receivers, running backs, and defensive linemen getting cut are better than Tariq Castro-Fields and Christian Holmes at their respective jobs. We're just deeper at other positions than others, man. It just is what it is. I would definitely prefer Mitchell Tinsley at wide receiver than Tariq Castro-Fields or Christian Holmes at corner. Same thing with Jared Patterson at running back. Same thing with Casey Toohill at defensive lineman. But that's just the nature of how this stuff goes down, man. They're good. Those other players I just named are going to end up on good teams if we don't end up keeping them. I'm warning you now. And then safety-wise, I mean, this is a debate. I mean, really the only thing is, do you consider Quan Martin a safety or a corner? I see him as a potential starting slot corner for us, like just inevitably most of his career. But I think he's going to play a lot of everything, every game anyway. But I see him as a primarily slot type of guy. But either way, we kept 5 safeties last year. We're keeping 5 this year. Cameron Curl and Derek Forsey as starters. That's an elite safety tandem. Argue with a wall. I don't care. I believe in those two a lot. And then Percy Butler off the bench. He was shining at times in the preseason. He made some mistakes as well, but man, that's a guy that's learning the game, slowing down for him. The sky's the limit when you're that fast and that long. I mean, that guy with that bursty, that much acceleration, that much speed, I mean, that guy is just a ball of clay waiting to be turned into an elite playmaker at the position. Kind of like Derek Forrest had that big jump last year. Percy Butler can have a similar jump. Just freak athletes, ridiculous speed that once the game slows down for them, they take off. And Percy Butler was saying a lot of things. A lot of things that Derek Forrest was saying last year, Percy Butler was saying this offseason. So don't be surprised if he makes the same jump. And then Jeremy Reeves, man, all pro Revo, man. If one thing about special teams, he's going to do that. And then also he's a pretty dependable backup safety. He's last on the depth chart out of all of those safeties that we're looking at right now. But, hey, man, if he had to come into the game, I'm not terribly terrified about that just because, I mean, we saw him as one of our starting safeties one year, and we were fine. It wasn't great. It wasn't elite play, but it was decent, consistent play. So don't forget the fact that Jeremy Reeves was a starting safety for us for a few games a couple of years ago, a long period of time. And then lastly, of course, we have the 3 specialists. Joey Sly already won that kicking competition before we even went into that Ravens preseason game, and then he made every kick, every extra point. I think he went like 3 for 3 or 2 for 2 on kicks and made all his extra points as well, 3 for 3 on that as well. So we're good to go there. Tressway should be healthy enough to be our starting punter. He's a legend, should be a future Hall of Famer, should be a Pro Bowler, All-Pro, but the NFL just doesn't respect him for some reason. It is what it is. And then Cameron Cheeseman, our starting long snapper. And going into this offseason before the draft, before free agency, I didn't think we had a needed long snapper. Now I'm scared because apparently he's changing his long snapping technique. And and it's not working out. He's been so inconsistent, man. That Ravens preseason game, that man was trying to bounce past the snap to Tressway so he can get it ready for Joey Sly. Shouts out to Tressway for being the legend that he is. Somehow recovering that football off a bounce pass and getting it ready for Joey Sly how he needed it to successfully kick that ball. And you never know, man. Maybe some of the problems that Joey Sly was having last year with inconsistent kicking may have been Cameron Cheeseman's fault. I don't know. There's a lot of nuance that goes into the special teams that I can't speak on. I consider myself a really knowledgeable person of football, but I can't speak on a lot of nuanced things like special teams, long snapping, and stuff like that. I don't have that information for you. I'm so sorry. I would have to be one to know one, I guess. But either way, man, Cameron Cheeseman, I don't know why your fixing was not broken. Because last year I just didn't feel like I had to worry about Cameron Cheeseman. I know we like drafted him in like the 5th round or something like that. We were complaining, but at the end of the day, we were like, well, we don't have to worry about long snappers, so it may feel like somewhat of a waste of a 5th round pick. But first of all, there was a run on long snappers. The guy we really, really wanted, our guy number 1 long snapper on our big board, was taking like a few picks before us. And then we took Cameron Cheeseman out of like man, we got to get our guy now. And then long snappers, there was like a whole run of like 3 or 4 more long snappers soon after we picked them. So it was kind of like you had to get them there. It really wasn't the Commanders' fault there. We needed a long snapper. But I just feel like we've never had to worry about long snapping technique with Nick Sundberg as long as he was here for so many years. So I don't know what's going on, Cameron Cheeseman, but you better get that figured out because, man, if it were up to me, I would have found a random free agent long snapper to put right here, but I just didn't even know where to look and where to dig into. But boy, I was thinking about putting some random face right there or a little blank unlocked character with a question mark, a little silhouette of a man, and just put free agent right there or something. And then now for my closing notes, where I could possibly go wrong. We've already kind of discussed this earlier in the video, but I feel like maybe we'll keep 4 running backs. Who knows who it will be? Again, I'm rooting for Jared Patterson, but maybe that's one way my predictions could go wrong. Also, wide receiver 5 and 6, and maybe even wide receiver 7. Wide receiver 5 and 6, I could be wrong about Dax Milne and Byron Pringle. Again, I'm rooting for Marcus Kemp a little bit because I just feel like, he brings something to the table that nobody else does. And I could also be wrong about the fact that Mitchell Tinsley is so good, dog. He had our highest offensive grade in that final preseason game with a 90.3. It showed, man. He was the best offensive player we had on the field all night on Saturday, man. And like I said, if he doesn't make one of our top 6 or if we don't keep 7 wide receivers and he slides in there, which I highly doubt we do, somebody's going to pick him up, and he's at the very least going to be a wide receiver 3 or 4 for a team. And I can see him working his way up to wide receiver 2. He has that much talent. I believe in him that much. I think he's that good of a receiver. It may not happen immediately, but I think he has wide receiver 2 written all over him in general. Even if that may take like a year or 2, I see that in him. And again, I think immediately, like if we let him go, he doesn't make our 53-man roster, another team's going to pick him up. He's going to be their wide receiver 4. He's that good. So that's probably where I could go wrong there. Also, tight end 4. Maybe I'm wrong about Alex Armah, keeping him as a fullback tight end, almost running back type of guy. Maybe they keep Curtis Hodges, or maybe they keep the other tight end. I can't remember his name right now, but he's the one that caught the touchdown that allowed us to lose that game to the Giants so we can get Chase Young with that 2nd overall pick. Maybe offensive tackle 4. Maybe we just say forget it with Braden Daniels. Maybe we bite the bullet and admit we were wrong and just go ahead and try to sneak him onto the practice squad. I don't think anybody saw his tape this preseason and was like, yo, let's steal him from the Commanders, man. I know he was a 5th round pick, but a 4th round pick, matter of fact. I don't think anybody's looking like, I know that was a 4th round pick and we got to take, it's not even, it doesn't matter what round he was picked. Honestly, he shouldn't have been picked in that round. I don't think any team is like, ooh, man, I hope they release Braden Daniels, boy. We going to take him immediately. I don't think anybody's doing that, so we may keep a different tackle there. Like I said, my boy Trent, I think he would be better off right there than Braden Daniels. I'm not going to lie. And then also on the defensive side of the ball, I guess, do you see Quan Martin as a corner? Do you see Obata as an edge rusher? Those are really the only things defensively I think I could potentially be wrong about. But even then, I already acknowledged that I don't think I would be wrong. I just prefer the symmetry of having 5, 5, and 5 for all 4 of those. 5 interior defensive linemen, 5 edge rushers, 5 corners, 5 safeties, rather than 6-4, 6-4. And then also the players I'm most sad about. Mitchell Tinsley, losing him. I've already talked about that. Also, interior offensive lineman Mason Brooks. Because as of right now, Mason Brooks had to step into a game of Braden Daniels. Who do I trust more? Mason Brooks in interior offensive line or Braden Daniels at tackle? I trust Mason Brooks right now. Honestly, more than Braden Daniels. He stuck out more. He was out there bullying people on Saturday. Again, backups, but when you're looking like a starter amongst backups, that shows something. So don't be surprised if they find a way to keep Mason Brooks on this roster some way, somehow. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then also, again, running back Jared Patterson, dog. Always shines. Preseason, regular season, doesn't matter. But the Commanders just don't like him as much as we do. But don't be surprised if this is the year where Eric Bieniemy finally steps in. Is like, Ron Rivera, y'all have just been tripping. I don't know why y'all haven't been keeping this guy. He's always productive. Maybe Eric Bieniemy comes in and gives those guys the light, shows them the light as far as Jared Patterson goes. Or maybe they don't. Then also, again, like I already spoke on, Marcus Kemp. The special teams blocking and being 6'5", those are 2 things no other receiver in our receiver group says that they can do effectively. Nobody's taller than 6'1". And also, of course, sad about, technically disappointed in Curtis Hodges. I had big hopes for him. I'm not as high on him as I was like Armani Rogers, of course, and I'm hoping he gets well soon. But man, I mean, being 6'8" and you can't catch, what are you out there for? Honestly, like if you're 6'8" and can't catch, what are you here for? Like, what made you think like you belong? Like, come on, get it together, man. I'm still rooting for you. I don't want to get on you too bad, but man, that was bad, dog. Them drops, boy. Like, what are you 6'8" for? Type of thing. You can't catch. Why? Why are you 6'8"? But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, of course, and let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Of course, let me know your 53-man roster predictions. You can go position group by position group, like leave whole paragraphs in the comment section if you want to. I'm definitely going to do what I can in my busy schedule, trying to read and reply to as many comments as I can. It's really difficult, but I'm trying, man. I really want to see what y'all come up with in y'all 53-man roster predictions. Again, they're due the 29th by 4 p.m. So we have like at least 24 hours to like really have fun with this and everybody put their predictions in. So make sure y'all go check those out, get in the comment section for that. And of course, stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release informative and opinionated videos just like this one. But I really appreciate y'all. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors' names you scrolling on the screen right now. I'm going to catch y'all later. I'm out.